I'm going to show you a little bit of Visual Studio Code setup that we're going to be doing, and also going to show you a trick which will speed up your programming, and we'll be using this trick throughout this entire tutorial series. So I thought let's discuss it with you guys before we actually get into the programming. So I did my research and finally I've decided that I'm going to be going ahead with the light theme, and let me give you the reasons. So I know that the dark theme looks very cool and it's pretty geeky, but the problem is when you're watching a video, the text in the code, especially when you're coding, is not really that crisp. It is not that sharp. So if you take a white background, the text on it looks very clear, and I've also observed this myself. So the primary goal of our entire video series is that the text and the code should look very clear. So that's why we're not going with the cool looks of the dark theme. You can personally choose to use the dark theme. So yes, I'm going to go with the white theme. Maybe in between I might switch back to black theme just for having some change. So this was something that I wanted to share with you because your feedback is very valuable. Now about this theme, so this theme is not exactly inbuilt, so when you install Visual Studio Code, you only get certain limited themes. So if you go into the settings and see the color theme, if you just select this, you'll see the number of themes that we have. So my theme currently is the NetBeans Lite theme. Okay, so in the Lite theme, I'm using this NetBeans Lite theme. So this theme is not by default available, but what happens is in this Visual Studio Code, we can add themes, we can add extensions, and this is something which gives a lot of features and functionality to this Visual Studio Code. So that's why this text editor is amazing. So if you want to get this NetBeans Lite theme, what you can do is you can just go to the extensions. So this is that icon for extensions, and just type in NetBeans Lite theme. Make sure your internet should be on over here, and you can see this is that theme. I have already installed it. You can see this button over here. If you've not installed, you can get this, and then you can just install it and reload your Visual Studio Code. And then in the settings, in the color theme, you'll get this theme over here. So this is just if you want, you can use any theme of your choice. You can search for many other themes also. And I also went ahead and downloaded a nice dark theme which I feel is really amazing, which I might use in future. So it's named Monokai Contrast, which is again not available initially. So let me just show it to you. So this is that theme. I think this looks very cool, and probably it will look good on the videos also, but I'm not sure, so I'm going to use the white theme. So for this also, you just have to go to the extensions and search Monokai Contrast, and you can see that this is theme that is available. So I've already installed, you can also install it. Okay, so this was one thing that I wanted to talk about, give you my feedback and appreciate your feedback as well. Now the second thing that I wanted to share with you guys is an amazing extension, a plugin which you can add in your Visual Studio Code, and it will surely speed up your development speed. In fact, this extension was suggested to us by our own subscriber itself. His name is Charu D, I guess. In a comment, he mentioned that we should use this extension, which is known as Live Preview or Live Server, I guess. So I installed that extension and I tried it out, and it's really amazing. It's definitely gonna be improving our programming speed and help us perform smart coding. So let me just show you that extension. So by default, you probably would not have it. Just go on the extensions and type in Live Server. So when you type this, this is that extension which comes up, which I have installed. Let me just show it to you. If you click on it, you get the details of that extension. It's by Ritwik Day, and it is used by many people. So you just click install over here, you'll get an option. And after installing, just reload this Visual Studio Code. You'll get an option of that as well. So what this Live Server does is it executes your HTML and JavaScript code on the fly, and you can see the changes live happening without you refreshing or saving your files. So let me just show you an example or demo of that. So I've already installed it. I'm just going to show you the demo. So you can see we already have a default.html file over here, and I've written document.write hello world. I'm just printing. So this is something that we did in the previous video also. So this is that default.html. I'm just going to run it. Okay, so as you can see, I've printed hello world, and in the body I've written hello world. Now if I want to add something else, let's say I want to add a break tag, and I want to say h2 or h3 and say Telesco Learnings. So now what I have to do is I have to save this file and then go to the browser and refresh this, and only then the output will be shown, right? So this is basically a hassle by jumping between two different things. Like you have to go from the Visual Studio editor and you have to go to the output browser and again refresh it. You have to save this file, and this switching is a little bit irritating. You have to go back and forth between the editor as well as the browser. So what this Livewire extension does is, once you've installed this, you'll get an option of go live over here. Okay, so when you click on this, another tab will be opened over here, and you can see there is an IP address over here. So what this extension does is it creates a server on your system, and this server is constantly checking your file for changes. So if I just copy this and paste it again over here, you can see by default this got refreshed over here and this line got added. I didn't even have to refresh this. So this is a real great amazing feature, and it might sound trivial, you might think, okay, it's just one less thing to do and you just have to refresh it. But then when you're going in your real world environment, when you're into development scenario, when you join a company, these small tricks and tips are definitely used a lot to enhance your programming. You want to be a smart programmer, you don't want to be a normal programmer. So all these tips and tricks are definitely used. So let me just show it to you again. Just I'm copying and pasting this once more, and here we go. We already got the output over here. So we don't have to save this, we don't have to refresh this. Now one last thing that you have to do in your Visual Studio Code, which is not compulsory of course, that you have to go in your settings, and in the settings just search for save, scroll a little bit down, and you can see that I have turned on my autosave after delay. So what this does is, if you are not doing anything after 500 milliseconds, then the file will be automatically saved. So I've turned this on so that I don't have to save it again and again. So go to the settings, you can turn on this after delay and give your milliseconds. You can give more than 500, you can give 1000 for 1 second, 2000 for 2 seconds, and so on. Once you turn this on, you never have to save your file again. It gets auto saved in the background. And once it gets auto saved in the background, this output also gets refreshed because of this live server plugin, right? It is running on port 550. So this is that port. So since this is a very beginner level tutorial, we'll just take a little bit of theory on variables and we'll see the data types, and then we'll jump to the programming part. That is, we'll jump to the Visual Studio Code. So as you can see on the screen, I have a little bit of jargon filled definitions for variables. So these are the bookish definitions which you can find on the internet also. So let me just quickly read through them and then we'll see an explanation. So a variable provides us with a named storage that our programs can manipulate. So this is definition number 1. Another type of definition would be, variables are used to store information to be referenced and manipulated in the computer program. So pretty much similar to the first one, just with a little bit of more words, complex words actually. And then in programming, a variable is a value that can change. Hence actually the name variable. Variable basically means an entity that can variate or change, and depending on the condition or the information passed to the program. So after reading these 3 definitions, it sounds pretty complex, but of course it's very easy concept, that is variables and data types. And if you're coming from any other programming language, and if you have any other experience of any programming language, pretty much the same concept is being applied over here of variables and data types with a little bit of difference. So for the absolute beginners, to give you a context, let me just give you a scenario. So on this right hand side, what you can see is a basic diagram of a desktop. So in a computer system, what you have is a RAM, which is actually acting as your primary memory. So whenever you execute a program or whenever you open any application or any software, what happens is in the RAM, some memory is being allocated. Okay. So let's say you have opened your Chrome browser. So then some memory will be allocated for the Chrome browser to run in the RAM. Similarly, our JavaScript program, whenever runs in the Chrome browser or whenever it is running, it is basically existing in the RAM, right? So our RAM is basically divided into small memory blocks, and each of these memory blocks has some hexadecimal or some binary address, which is pretty weird and long, so you obviously cannot remember as a human being. So it's some hexadecimal values also, like FF, 0x and something like that. So when you create a variable, what happens is, in the memory, you allocate some portion of the memory and you give it a name. Okay, so that's why we have a named storage over here. So what you do is, we allocate this memory and we say, okay, I'm going to name it A. So even though it has an address which is very weird to remember, we give an alias name, that is an extra name, and we call it A. So in JavaScript, it goes something like this. We have to say var A, and let's say we are storing a number 5. Okay, and then semicolon. So in this memory block, we have the value of 5. So we'll talk about the syntax when we actually get into the practical part. But here's what the scenario is happening in the behind the scenes in the memory. Okay. Now the next obvious question that you must be having is, why variables? Why do we need variables, right? So the most simple answer to this is to store data. That's the most simple way I can answer you why you need variables. Now imagine a program wherein you are taking values from users of a rectangle. So you're taking length and breadth, and your program is calculating the area of rectangle. So when you take those values of length and breadth, you need to store them in certain variables because you want to perform some mathematical operations, right? You have a formula to calculate area. So in that case, you'll require some variables. Now obviously, as a human being, you cannot remember each and every memory address, right? So you cannot remember these numbers. So these memory addresses are big numbers which only a machine can read. So this variable helps us by giving that memory block another name, and then we can use this name to access that same memory block. Okay. So this is a basic explanation of variables. Now let's move on to the types of variables or data types of variables in JavaScript. Okay, so now that you've understood the concept of variables, every variable will have a type. And basically type means what kind of data is being stored. So variable where a can store a number, let's say it's 5. It can probably store a string which will have some name ABC, and it can store boolean and so on and so forth. So of course every programming will have a set of data types which are unique to them. So since we are dealing with JavaScript, we have these many data types as you can see in the tree structure. So we have primitive data types, which are 3 different types of primitive data types: number, string and boolean. Then we have some other data types or trivial data types which are actually primitive only, just that they have one more name, that is trivial or other types, which is null and undefined. So this is 1, 2 and 3. So we have numbers, we have strings and we have boolean as primitive types. Again we have null and undefined also as primitive types, but they are also called trivial or other types. And lastly we have composite types, which are complex types basically, which consist of objects and arrays. So we'll talk about complex or composite types in further videos, wherein I'll have separate videos for each of these types. Right now we'll just deal with these 3 primitive types in the programming part. So before moving to the visual code text editor, that is the practical side, these are 2 very important points that you need to understand for JavaScript, specifically for JavaScript. So let me just read it out and I'll explain to you. So JavaScript is loosely typed programming language. And the second point says JavaScript is dynamically typed scripting language or programming language. It's one and the same thing because we are on the client side scripting. Now remember these 2 keywords, loosely and dynamically typed. Okay. Now let's move on to the programming part and I'll explain to you what does loosely and dynamically mean by showing you examples. And we'll also see how to create variables and different variations of the primitive types as well. Okay, so as you can see, I have my text editor open, that is Visual Studio Code, and this is our basic HTML document. Inside that we have our script tag, but here we have declared certain variables. So in JavaScript, this is how you create a variable. Now if you're coming from a C++ or Java background, this might look a little bit weird to you, right? Because in C++ and Java we used to be like int x equals to 5 and something like that, right? We already had a data type. But here you can see there is no data type. We are only using the keyword var. So this is where that loosely typed keyword comes into picture. That is, JS is loosely typed. What this line means is you don't have to define the data type of the variable when you create the variable. Okay, so you don't have to tell what data type it is initially. So what happens is whatever the type of value you pass in the variable, automatically the data type will change. And this is where the second definition or second point or second property of JavaScript comes into picture, that is JS is dynamically typed. Which means whatever value you pass, depending on the type of value, the data type of the variable will change. Now here you can see we have 3 different types of variables. So the first one is a number type because we are passing a number in it. Second one is a string because I'm passing a name, Tanmay Sakpal, yeah, that's my name. And the third one is a flag variable which is having a boolean value, which can have true or false. So I can change this to false also. Okay, so these are the 3 basic variables, that is the primitive types that we just saw in the previous digital blackboard. So again, the way you create a variable, you type in var, then you give the name, and you can assign a value right there itself, or you can just declare it and later on assign the value. So this is just declaration and this is initialization. And you can do both in one single line. You can see this is that example wherein I've also declared a variable named num and I've initialized the value of 16. Okay, so now when you're creating variables, there are certain rules to create variables, that is to assign names to the variables. Okay, so basically what I mean is there are certain naming conventions being followed which are known as identifiers. So the rules for creating an identifier, basically identifier is the name that you give to a variable in JavaScript, are as follows. So the name of the identifier should not be any predefined keyword. So you cannot name your variable as var. Okay, so I cannot say var. So this is going to give you an error. You can see the error is showing because var is a predefined JavaScript keyword. So you cannot use that. Then the first character must be a letter or an underscore or a $sign. It cannot be anything else. So I cannot start with var @. So this is again going to be giving me an error. However, I can start off with underscore or a dollar sign. And then the next characters may be any letter or digit or number or underscore as you wish. So you can have num1 or you can have num dollar, something in between. And lastly, variables are case sensitive. So var num, and if I create one more variable and if I say num where n is capital, then this is different and this is different. So this is what case sensitive means. So there are two different variables because n is capital. So these are the naming conventions and I hope they are clear in your mind. Probably you can write them or note them down if you're an absolute beginner, or you can just take a screenshot. So lastly, what I'm going to do is, as you can see, the last statement of this script tag wherein I have a JavaScript line is document.write num. So what I'm doing is I'm taking this num variable whose value is 16 and I'm just printing it on the web browser. So let's try to run this default.html. Okay, so as you can see, I just opened that document. I'm not going live as of now. I'm not using the live server plugin because I just wanted to show you this printing. And then there is another function which you can use, which I just want to introduce over here, is the alert function. So inside this alert, I'm just going to write the num, and I know I have not talked about functions, but just type along with me. I'm going to comment this document.write statement, save this, and when I run this, there you go, you can see we got a pop-up message saying this page says 16. The 16 is this number variable. I'm just going to say okay. So this is what this function does. So I just wanted to introduce this so that in further videos when we use it, you feel comfortable. So one more thing that I wanted to show is, as I mentioned, JavaScript is dynamically typed, which means the data type of the variable changes depending upon what value you pass. So here you can see this num is storing 16, that's why it is a number. So what I'm going to do is at this line, I'm going to say num is equal to, and I'm going to say Tanmay, which is my name. So now again I'm going to just pop up this message in the alert, just save this and refresh this, and there you go, now it is saying Tanmay. So this means that initially our num variable was a number, but at this line, because of course the code runs line by line, at this line the num variable changed its data type to string because we stored a string in it. So this is what is meant by JavaScript is dynamically typed. And of course you know what is JavaScript is loosely typed, right? Because we don't have to specify the data type initially. We don't have to say int. This will give you an error. So it doesn't work in JavaScript like that. So JS is loosely typed. Or another way to say it is JS is not strictly typed. So whenever you see a programming language is strictly typed, it means that the data type or whatever type of data is being stored has to be specified before. We've seen what are comments, what are statements, we also saw what are variables, and if you have missed those videos, you can check it out in this playlist. So coming to the today's topic, that is operators in JavaScript. So since this is a very beginner level tutorial, we're going to be taking a little bit of theory and then we'll jump to the practical part, that is we'll see also a program wherein we'll be using these operators. So starting off, JavaScript operators are symbols which are used to assign values, compare values, perform arithmetic operations and more. So essentially these are symbols, okay? Symbols means plus, minus, less than equal to, greater than equal to and whatnot. Now the variables are called as operands and the operation to be performed is defined by an operator. So in terms of a program, it would be something like, let's say we create a variable var a and we say equal to 10. So this equal to is basically an operator. It is an assignment operator, and what it is doing is it is assigning this value 10 and it is storing it in this variable, right? So this is that assignment operator, for example. Of course, we'll see a lot of program examples in some time after this little bit of theory. So now there are different types of operators in JavaScript depending upon what activities or what functionality they provide us. So we have arithmetic operators, we have comparison operators, we have logical operators, and as the name suggests, arithmetic operators perform arithmetic operations, that is plus, minus, multiplication, division, modulo and whatnot. Similarly, comparison operators, as the name suggests, is used to perform comparisons between two variables or two entities. Then we have logical operators which use these comparison operators to give certain results, either true or false. Then we have assignment operators. We saw one equal to operator, which is a type of assignment operator. Then we have conditional operators, which are used to check for conditions. We have string operators, we have type operators and bitwise operators. So obviously we are not going to be taking a look at each and every operator in detail in the practical part because that doesn't make sense, and in the further videos as we move ahead in this series, we are anyways going to be covering a lot of operators depending upon the program and depending upon the need. So yes, this was just a little bit of theory on what are operators in JavaScript and the different types of operators. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to glance through each and every operator type, and I'll just show you the different operators and the meaning and what they do. And what you can do is you can pause the screen if you just want to note them, or if you just want to go through them, you can just take a screenshot. So we'll go one by one, starting off from the arithmetic operator till the bitwise operator. Okay, so these are the arithmetic operators available in JavaScript. We have plus, minus, multiplication is a star. Then we have division, modulus, increment and decrement. Okay, so these are used to perform arithmetic operations. Let's move ahead. Okay, so these are the comparison operators, that is, comparison and logical operators are used to test for true or false. Okay, so you want to test a condition, you use comparison operators. So again, we have the operator, we have the description, what it is called, and we have different examples. You can just pause the video and glance through them. And as I mentioned, as we move ahead in this series, we're going to be using a lot of operators, so don't worry if I'm skipping or moving a little bit fast over here. So let's move ahead. So these are the logical operators which are used in comparison, and again they are used to test for true and false values. So we generally use them in if else and all those control statements which we will see in further videos. So again, these are the three operators: the description, that is and, or and not, and then a little bit of example. You don't need to be worrying about all these. We are obviously going to take a look at them in detail in further videos. The next is assignment operator, which is used to assign values to JavaScript variables or other entities. So we have equal to, we have plus equal to, we have minus equal to, and then there are examples and what they actually mean. Moving ahead, we have a conditional operator which has three different parts. That's why a ternary operator. So this is how it looks like. We have a variable name, we have the condition, and depending upon if the condition is true, value 1 will be assigned, and if it is false, then value 2 will be assigned. So for example, we have a variable var votable, and then we are saying is age less than 18. If it is less than 18, then it will be too young, and if it is not less than 18, then it will be old enough. So this is how it looks. We'll use this in the program in further videos, don't worry. So the plus operator also operates as a string operator, which means that we can use it with strings. So just as plus operator is used to add two numeric values, we can concatenate two text values using the plus operator. Okay, so for example, you can see var text1, var text2, and we are seeing text1 plus a little bit of space in between and plus text2. So this is the output John Doe, which comes from two different variables concatenated in text3. Then we have type operator, which is used to determine the type of data being stored in a variable or an object. So depending upon whether it is variable, we use type of, and if it's an object, we use instance of. So if a variable is holding a numeric value, that is a number value, it will return a numeric output. Okay, so we'll use this type of and instance of also in further videos. And lastly, we have the bitwise operators, which work on 32-bit numbers, and any numeric operand in the operation is converted into a 32-bit number, and the result is converted back into JavaScript number. Okay, so for example, we have and, or, not, XOR. So these are all Boolean operators which perform Boolean operations. So for example, you can see phi and 1 first is going to be converted into its binary form. So phi is 0 and 0 1. Then we have the AND operator, and we have 3 times 0 and 1. And then we perform an AND operation between them. So it's a logical AND operation, which is a Boolean operation. And then we get the result, which we convert back to decimal form. So these operators are not used a lot, and they're only used in certain specific cases, especially if you are designing a circuit, which is a digital circuit, wherein we are performing some Boolean algebraic operations, but they're not highly used a lot in general scenarios. So yeah, this was a little bit of theory. Now let's jump to the programming part, and we'll see a couple of examples of operators, and we'll understand a concept of operator precedence and operator associativity. Okay, so as you can see on the screen, I have opened up my Visual Studio Code, and on the right hand side we have our Google Chrome opened, and I'm also live. So you can see I've used a live server plugin to go live. So whatever changes I make over here, so let's say if I change the value of this variable to 3, the result will be immediately reflected without me refreshing it, because I've also turned on the autosave feature of Visual Studio. So anyways, as you can see on the screen, we are performing a little bit of addition over here. So I have variable 1, I have created variable b, and then what I'm saying is var result is equal to a plus b. And lastly, what I'm doing is I'm just printing out this result in a h1 tag, and I'm saying result is, then I'm using the plus operator. So again, you can see I'm using an operator to concatenate the result, and here I'm using the plus operator to perform addition. Okay, so the plus operator is doing two different things. When it is strings, it is performing concatenation, and when it is numbers, it is performing addition. So now one thing I wanted to talk about is associativity. Now certain operators have a right to left associativity and certain operators have left to right associativity. So what do I mean by this? So when I say right to left associativity, so in this first case what is happening is the number 3 is being assigned to variable a, right? So what is happening is RHS, that is right hand side, to the equal to sign is being assigned to LHS, that is this variable a. So this is why it is right to left. Okay, so when you're using this equal to sign, it is a right to left associativity. Let's take another example. So let's say I'm again creating one more variable. I'm saying where c is equal to 6. Okay, now in the result what I'm going to say is a plus b plus c. Now the result again has changed. You can see 6 plus 3 plus 3. So when you're using plus sign, the associativity is from left to right, which means what is happening is first a and b are added, then the result of a and b is added with c, and then the assignment is happening, that is the whole total of a plus b plus c is being assigned to the result variable, because equal to sign has right to left associativity, right? Now you're wondering, why is this relevant? Now from the previous video we know that JavaScript is loosely typed or weakly typed programming language, right? Which means that we don't have to declare any kind of data type of the variables. So whatever the data is assigned, by default the data type is changed. So now what I can do over here is, if I add a string over here and I add a plus sign over here, even this is valid. Since the associativity of plus sign is from left to right, so it will start from left and it will see that okay, the first thing to add is a string. So it will assume that everything ahead of this is also a string. So if you see, the result is A33. So what it did is it took A as a string. Let me just change this to something else. I'll say Tanmay. Now you can see what is happening is we are getting a result of Tanmay 33, which means that this variable a and b did not get added and we did not get a total of 6, because as I mentioned, since the associativity is from left to right, all the things are converted to string now. So if I change this to 8, you can see the result is 38. So they are all concatenated because plus operator operates as a concatenation between strings, right? Now again I'm going to change this same thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add something over here. I'm going to say c plus b and plus Tanmay. But now you can see that the result is 14 Tanmay 38. So c is 6, b is 8, which means that initially we got the total, right? So this was considered as a number because the associativity of plus is from left to right. So it started from left. So it says okay, c is a number, b is a number, let's add it. This was added, we got a result of 14. Now when it came over here, that is the program execution came over here, it saw this as a string. So it's like okay, since this is a string, let's concatenate with the result. So 14 was concatenated with Tanmay and everything ahead of this was considered as a string. So it was also concatenated. So A was 3 and B was 8, which was considered as a string and concatenated, and the result was stored in the result variable. So this was something which is known as associativity. Now there is one more thing which is known as precedence, and the precedence applies different to different operators. Again, I have a complete article wherein we have operator precedence and we have associativity and we have all the program examples. I'll link that article in the description. You can check it out if you want to check out the theory. There's a lot of content in there. But the basic precedence principle is which operator should perform operation first over the next. Okay. So we can have multiple operations in one single line also, right? So you can say where result 2 is equal to A plus B, and now you can say star C. So what I'm doing over here is I'm also performing addition and multiplication. So when there are two different operations in one single expression, which operator should operate first depends on the operator precedence, because obviously that is going to be changing the value, right? So if I say A plus B, which happens first, that is 8 plus 3, which would be 11, and then 11 into 3 would be 33, right? However, if I multiply B star C first, so B is 8 and C is 6. So 8 6 would be 48, and 48 plus 3 would be, so the output is different, right, in different cases. So that's why precedence matters. So in that theory article which I just told, which I've shared in the description, you can check out the precedence values. And in general, the arithmetic operators follow our BODMAS rule, which we use in our algebra also. That is, the multiplication happens first before addition and so on and so forth. But I can change that using brackets. Okay, so if I say brackets over here and if I print the result 2, you can see result is 66. However, if I remove the brackets, the result would be 51. That is, the result is changed. So this was operator precedence.